I met people from the Northern Cape who don't know where Orania is. I was like, they were like, isn't it that place? Where is it now again? I'm like, it's in your backyard. So there were instances where I did not have the Afrikaans words for the things I was trying to ask. They immediately stepped in and gave me the Afrikaans words. For me, that was beautiful because it meant that they were willing to have the conversation. I am a black person, and I can say this because we all know the reality of Orania. I'm a black person walking around on foot and even just driving in Orania. Already, I stick out like a sore thumb. This book is not about race. This book is about information. Yes, it touches on Afrikaners and they happen to be white in Orania. And yes, it's a black person writing it. But this book is not about race. I think from the moment I realized I could write this book, I just gave it my all. And it was tiring. Between writing this book, trying to keep a full-time job, just never doubt yourself. I remember at some point I was like, why? Why do I even bother? Because remember, and I think this is the thing that people never speak about in writing. When we write, we insert ourselves.
Righto. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great pleasure to have Dr. Lorato Mokwena back onto Abrasive Conversations. In this episode, we are going to discuss our upcoming book, a book that is set to make a wave in the South African landscape. A book that has already been discussed before it was published, ladies and gentlemen, on ENCA. So, Dr. Mokwena, welcome to Abrasive Conversations.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Dr. Mokwena, this book, as the audience know now, is a book about Orania.
Yeah.
Now, every book has a journey.
Yeah.
And you took a very interesting journey to finally arrive to Orania. You didn't just like, we are here, I want to take, I do want to do a research. So how did you come to write about Orania?
Yeah, so essentially I had a 3-year grant that was focusing on the Northern Cape. It was an LRF grant. And I soon realized that Orania is a place that nobody really writes about. So I am from the Northern Cape. And so whichever stories I've always heard about Orania has always been, you know, when you have information but you don't have information, this type of stories about Orania. And so with the NRF grant, which I had for 3 years, I decided I might as well go figure out what happens at Orania. So literally one random afternoon I was sitting and it came to me. I was like, you've done most places in the Northern Cape, why not Orania? I was scared, but I sent the email anyway through the structure at Orania, and I didn't expect an answer. I really didn't. It's one of those you like, I'm taking my shot. And I was like, they responded. A couple of days later, they responded. And that's literally how I got to do research about Orania and in Orania.
All right. So your journey started in the Northern Cape.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that people might not know. Where is Orania in South Africa?
I know, right? I met people from the Northern Cape who don't know where Orania is. I was like, they were like, isn't it that place? Where is it now again? I'm like, it's in your backyard, right? So Orania is, if you leave Kimberley, which is the capital city of the Northern Cape, you drive on the N12, you drive on your way to Hopetown. You get to Hopetown, and if you're from that side, you take a left, sort of past Hopetown, around the corner, and you'll get to Orania. So it's in the Northern Cape, very close to Hopetown, if you're coming from the N1. But it's in the Northern Cape, it really is.
So Orania is a place in the Northern Cape. And you will find it if you drive on the N12 towards Hopetown.
Yeah.
So you send this email.
Yeah.
You got a response. So you
Yes.
finally have this response. You are in the Northern Cape. So what happened next in terms of this journey?
Yeah, so get the email back, and so let me first tell you, I had to sharpen my Afrikaans, so I speak Afrikaans. I did Afrikaans for 12 good years at school. Lost a bit of it because I had to go to university, but I'm like, Afrikaans. Something within me was like, this email needs to be in Afrikaans, so I write this email comes back, it's in Afrikaans, which I don't mind at all. And so the email comes back, and I'm like, okay. Now they're like, okay, so how are we going to recruit participants? And I'm like, Now, this is a critical moment of research where you like, Orania is one of those areas where it's not like I can just walk in and be like, oh, I'm here doing research, consent form is here, ethical clearance is here. So we had to negotiate. And for me, that stands out about how you enter spaces where people are what I consider an at-risk group. And in South Africa, they are. And so we had to negotiate. So I'm like, okay, I need participants. And the person was like, what type of participants? When do you need them? What time do you need them, right? Age, what must they do, you know? And so we figured that out and we settled. I didn't know the participants beforehand. I just knew that I had a Saturday dedicated to me to do research in Orania. I was arriving at a specific time and the people would come meet me at a central place. And that's how we got to do the interviews.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, so this is the important thing in understanding this book. Is that Lorato speaks a lot of languages in South Africa.
Yeah.
And one of those languages is in Afrikaans.
Yeah.
So this whole negotiation was in Afrikaans.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I want you to take away is that in languages, and the language you speak of people give you access to particular spaces.
Yeah.
So now you are there, you have the participant. So what happened?
I was scared. Let's just flat out say I was scared. And I think the important thing about Afrikaans that I need people to understand, this is not an anomaly. I didn't speak Afrikaans because I was in Orania. I speak Afrikaans. I spoke Afrikaans throughout my entire research in the Northern Cape because if I were to speak English, I would be considered a Lani. Right? So the type of people I work with everyday people, everyday communities. And so I can't always rock up and speak English. So I code teach quite a lot. And so I got there.
Just hold on.
Yeah.
And this is the important thing, and that's why it's so good that we started with the Northern Cape.
Yeah.
The language that people speak in the Northern Cape, from Kuruman to Springbok to Carnarvon to Orania, all of that is Afrikaans, the majority. That's the lingua franca, if I'm correct.
Yeah. So you find that awkwardly, people don't want to admit this, and I know it because Afrikaans is a painful history in South Africa, and that's perfectly fine. We're not trying to erase that history. But it is a lingua franca. It's a lingua franca in the Northern Cape. And so I went in and I had my interview questions out. People came in. I was introduced to whoever they were because I can't mention who they are. And they sat down. And I think one of my interviews was like an hour and 30 minutes. I didn't stop the person. I just let the person go on. I asked questions. Where are you from? What do you do? Information, of course, the audience wouldn't know, but it helped me to shape my conversation with the person. Tell me, why do you stay here? What do you know about Orania? Because remember, we don't know anything about Orania, or the majority of South Africans do not know anything about Orania. Nothing that the media has not shaped, at least. And so I was asking very basic questions. Tell me about your monuments. Tell me about what Orania stands for. Tell me about holidays. Tell me about what you do on a Saturday. Very simple questions, basic questions. Tell me about Afrikaans. Do you speak Afrikaans? How is Afrikaans used? What do you do in your household? I mean, people were busy telling me about how they organize their households in terms of cleaning. So very simple questions in Afrikaans, of course. And the interesting part is that everybody knew, the people I was interviewing, they knew that ordinarily this would happen in English. And we were negotiating conversation the entire time. So there were instances where I did not have the Afrikaans words for the things I was trying to ask. They immediately stepped in and gave me the Afrikaans words. For me, that was beautiful because it meant that they were willing to have the conversation. Also, it showed that they take Afrikaans seriously, which they do. And so I had the interviews whole day on a Saturday. I started probably 10. I ended like something at 5, and that was after in-depth interviews with 6 people from various places, or rather various sort of circles in Orania. And I then did the data collection, the photographic material I had to take, and I drove out.
Yeah, just tell the audience the photographic material that you took.
Yeah.
It was what? It was with consent.
Yes, definitely, because I have ethical clearance. And so before we did the interviews, I had a tour of Orania. But because we were running out of time, I couldn't take the pictures. I had ethical clearance, not just for the research, of course, but to take pictures. Remember, I am a black person, and I can say this because we all know the reality of Orania. I'm a black person walking around on foot, and even just driving in Orania. Already, I stick out like a sore thumb. So I walked out, and the guy who hosted me, I told him, oh, is it okay if I just drive around and take a couple of more pictures because I did not have the time to do it? He's like, okay, that's perfectly fine. Just remember, public spaces only, because if you step onto somebody's yard, that is private property. And yeah, that was it.
So, and that's an interesting thing. There is public spaces in Orania.
Yeah.
So, you formulated, so after that, you went back, and how long passed before you start putting and conceptualizing the book together? So that people just get an idea that's not an overnight process.
It wasn't. I struggled. I had so much I wanted to say about Orania, but in all honesty, I never thought it would turn into a book. Never. I was like, 3 journal articles, at least 4, perhaps 5. And so I wrote actually for another program I was in, a journal paper, sort of like the end. I was focusing on Afrikaans in Orania because, it was sort of the theme of that program I was in. And the feedback I got was elaborate. You didn't say enough about this. And so I was like, but if I must say more than this, it's going to be like a 25-page journal article, which is unheard of, in my field at least. And I remember then I went to a writing interview, and a mentor of mine that time asked me, flat out, why don't you just write a book? And I thought, me? Book? When? How? It's like, just write a book. You just put everything together. And she said it so nonchalantly that I don't think she realized the seed she had planted. And I thought, I want to write a book. Me? Book? Nah. But then I realized that if I were to have a consistent narrative about Orania, and or at least the story I'm trying to tell about Orania, it would need to be in one piece, instead of it being scattered in their journal, this journal, because it's not like I could write a special issue by myself. And so the book was the next obvious thing.
Right. So now you have conceptualized a book, and then you approach the publisher. Which publishers did you approach?
Quite a few. The first one was an international one. And the person was like, I don't quite think this is going to work for our audience. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I don't know who else. But then the publisher that I have now, which is Africa Sun Media, wrote to them, they are with UWC Press, and so wrote. And of course, nobody likes being turned down. It's frustrating. It's demotivating. And they said yes, and I was like, yes? They were like, yes. And I was like, okay. So submitted to a couple of publishers, but the reality of the matter is that people need to have an audience for what you are trying to get them to invest in. And Africa Sun Media and UWC Press were like, okay, we can do this, and we did it.
And I must say, for people out there, in terms of choosing a publisher, choose a publisher that has a vested interest in the type of topic that you would put out there, and they have the capacity.
Yeah.
So just take us through that. I don't think a lot of people talk about the publishing process. So take us through that specific process, because it's not an overnight process.
It's not. It is. So essentially, then they got 2 reviewers from the book. And by the way, in the waiting period between them submitting to reviewers is stressful, because it's like any other process. If you submit something and nobody says anything, you get a bit nervous. And I kept asking, and they gracefully kept answering. Dr. Mokwena, no, we did this. And so eventually they got the reviews back. One of the reviews was brilliant. One day was negative. And they were like, because it's a stalemate, we need to find another reviewer, right? And so they found the 3rd reviewer. the third reviewer was like, okay, fine, we can do this. And so we had 2 positive reviews, and therefore we could go ahead with the project, right? But also, I think the part people never talk about is the relationship with the publisher in the waiting, how they hold you, how they keep encouraging you that, no, look, this happened, this didn't happen. We don't like this review, we're gonna get another one. Because obviously they invested too and they see value in what we're all trying to do. And eventually it came down to me getting the reviews. Now I'm getting all 3. Mind you, one of them is negative. And honestly, because I knew it was negative already, there's sort of like, you must respond. And this is the thing that people don't understand. Just because something is negative does not mean, first of all, that you don't respond to it. Even the most negative reviews, whether it's a journal paper, whether it's a book, you must respond because the person read the book. And so what I also learned in the process, even when you respond to negative reviews, there's something you can learn. Because even in people's most, I guess, even when they try to be the most meanest, they still offer value, right? Now it's for you to figure out what that value is. And so I had these three reviewers who I had to respond to. And I'm grateful. I'm actually really grateful that even the most meanest review said something about methodology. And the person, the way they phrased it made it appear as if people are going to doubt my methodology. And I'm grateful for that because it helped me to enhance. And it also gave me the opportunity to have a preface, which I did not have because I thought things were obvious. So even the most meanest reviews, I took that review, but I also had to argue back. And I think this is the thing about when you know your work has value. Yes, I took the review, I did what I could with it, but I left a lasting impression that I could defend my work. And I put in the response about how I responded, that I need it to be very clear. This book is not about race. This book is about information. Yes, it touches on Afrikaners and they happen to be white in Orania. And yes, it's a black person writing it. But this book is not about race. So I had to learn to stand up for my work.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mokwena said something that is so important that we sometimes miss, especially when we are readers of a book.
Yeah.
The book is blind peer review. So they don't know.
Yeah.
Even it might be someone that they really like, they don't know who is this person. It's only afterwards that you realize, I was actually person that.
Yeah.
So it's a blind review. So people doesn't know who this person actually is, and you, as the person, also really don't know. You might know the field, but you really are not sure whether this person. But the peer review system is academic citizenship. Yeah. It's an important thing that your work gets reviewed. So it's not just anyone, because the type of book that Lorato is writing is for scientific purposes. It is going out there, and it's informing a lot of view, and like you said, it's information. So the book is done now.
Yes.
It went through all of the things.
Yes.
It's gonna be launched soon. But before we get into the launch, what is one of those interesting findings that you find that you think would entice people to read a book?
Is that Afrikaners in Orania practice what I called Afrikaner employment equity.
All right, Afrikaner employment equity. We're going to leave it. We're going to leave it there because it sounds like a really interesting thing. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm spoiled. I have some inside information with regards to some of the findings, and I must tell you, it's definitely something that you have to read. So, who did you write this book for?
Everyone. This is when you read the preface of the book, the question is, I asked the question, so who should read this book? Everyone. The majority of South Africans and other people in the rest of the world don't know what Orania is about. We keep speculating about something that's down the road from us. So everybody should read the book. If you want information about Orania, if it tickles your fancy what happens in Orania, you've never been, you'll actually get to see pictures of Orania. So it's for everyone. But also the book is what I call an academic-ish book. So academics can also use the book in various fields to actually teach. So you have linguistics in there, obviously, because I'm a linguist. You have a bit of sociology in there, obviously history and politics. So everybody can read it because it's written very plainly. It's straight to the point, but even for those entry level, and even honors level, if you want to teach it at that level, it's for everybody and you can use it to teach, not just in universities, but in normal schools. You can just insert it as, did you know this place exists? And this is how it exists. And because I'm a researcher, I could not run away from the fact that, of course, I make claims in that book. And it would be careless of me to make claims that are not backed up. And therefore, references are needed because that is what scholarship is about. But the book is really for everyone.
Yeah. So you definitely read with a great level of great amount of scholars, and it's across various disciplines. And I think this is going to come through. I also know you as a really good writer. People can go on to loratomokwena.com and read some of the blog posts, and leading up to this book, there is blog posts on Orania. So go from this podcast, go there and go check out the podcast. If you have to take a lesson from this for you, what would you think would be the lesson?
About writing the book?
Yeah, like this whole process. It's like Orania starting research on an NRF grant, and then finally get to this moment where you are tired. It doesn't look like it, but the end of this process is tiring. It's an emotional journey. What is the lesson that you take from it?
Don't doubt yourself. I think from the moment I realized I could write this book, I just gave it my all. And it was tiring. Between writing this book, trying to keep a full-time job, just never doubt yourself. I remember at some point I was like, why? Why do I even bother? Because remember, and I think this is the thing that people never speak about in writing. When we write, we insert ourselves. You can't write and leave yourself out. And here I'm writing about Orania, associated with apartheid, associated with colonialism. I'll never forget the look on my father's face the same night when I got home that Saturday, when he asked me, but where do you come from so late? I tried calling you. Where were you? I said, I was in Orania. The man looked at me and he was like, the blood left his face, I swear. He was like, which Orania? I'm like, it's like that place where white people stay. The man walked away from me and just said, yo. Right? And so...
So sorry, Mokwena.
Yes.
I guess your father thought at that moment, where did I went wrong?
I know, right? Like out of all the children I could have in the whole wide world, this one decides to do work about Orania and comes in, stands in the middle of my kitchen and expects me to take it. Right? And so, honestly, may he so rest in peace, honestly. So don't doubt yourself. Once you are in it, do it. But another thing I would also tell anybody writing, right? After you are in the process of writing, just hold on to people. Speak to people. Don't go isolate yourself and think you're the only person that knows what you are going through. Reach out. Say, I'm drained. I'm tired. I feel empty. Because after I submitted this manuscript, I was done. I had inserted so much of myself and I was invested so much, not because it's my book and my name is on it, but at some point when you are writing about the type of things that I was writing about, and the type of interactions I needed to have, those interviews weren't easy. Going to Orania wasn't easy. And I remember reflecting as a black researcher and as a black person, what does this mean? What does you writing a book about Orania mean? So during it, don't doubt yourself. During it, like before it, don't doubt yourself. During it, reach out. Don't isolate yourself. After it, reflect. Just reflect. Where are you? How do you feel? Do you need somebody to come in to debrief with you? Because it's so important. So that there's much of you left to write many more books. But never forget that you go in with yourself and you want to come out with yourself still intact.
I love it that you said, don't doubt yourself, because I think that's one of the things that we suffer in the university and the research environment, is that we get turned down so much, and people doesn't know. It's really, journal article, turned down. A book, turned down. Next journal article, turned down. Go to a conference, turned down. Get the conference, apply for funding in the university, turned down. So you live with turned down, and so I'm glad that you say that the debriefing, the care, surround yourself with people. And even if you're turned down, don't doubt. Don't doubt yourself. So what's next? What can people look forward to?
So we have finally started the drive of launching the book, of marketing the book, and so we have book launches. We have one coming up in September at Salt Lake University. We have one in October with the University of the Western Cape, and of course the book will be available to buy from Take-A-Lot. The book will be available to get from Africa Sun Media. And of course, as the popularity of the book increases, which it will, we'll put it out in major bookstores. And that is what's next, and just enjoying and celebrating. It's a huge milestone for any person who gets to see their name in print on a book, particularly if you come from a background where a book is the least people expected from you. It's a moment to enjoy. So we are celebrating, we are grateful, and we want people to, I just want people to join in and learn. I just want people to learn. In the acknowledgements, the last line says, and to you for buying the book, thank you for learning with me.
All right, the next book, I'll put that line. it's one of the quotes I'm going to take from Dr. Mokwena. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know that anyone would listen to this conversation would go and buy the book, and after reading the book, they was probably going to invite you and ask you to come speak to you. So you are available.
Yes, I am.
LinkedIn.
Yes.
LinkedIn, and you will find her details on our website,
Definitely.
which is loratomokwena.com.
Yeah.
In the description of this video, I'm also going to put their details. Dr. Mokwena, thank you very much for joining me on Abrasive Conversations. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.